All right, now we're official. My name is Heather Riggs, as I mentioned earlier. I'm with the New England Museum Association. I'm here in Somerville, Massachusetts, and we would like to start today's lunch with NEMA with land acknowledgement by Scarlett Hoey.
Good afternoon, everyone. Virtual spaces cannot replace the lands that sustain and empower us. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts, homelands of the Nipmuc Nation people and their allied tribes, past and present. The Nipmuc Nation Tribal Council is located at 25 Main Street, South Grafton, and the Hassanamisco Indian Museum is at 80 Brigham Hill Road in Grafton. NEMA recognizes that our organization and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society, which continues the exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples throughout New England and beyond. You can use the Indigenous Peoples Land Map to locate the lands where your museum is located and where you're zooming in from today. I'll put the link in the chat so everyone can use it. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Scarlett, for that. So let's officially go into facilitating successful paying youth programs in a virtual world with Angela Esposito from the Chicago. I am just loving today. She's the Senior Manager of Education Experience at the Chicago Arts Center. She's actually one of our great pivots. You did submit a session proposal for our conference last year, and we put it into a webinar instead. So that was great to do that and see that. I'm going to return it over to you, but just to mention that we are recording today. The recording will be available on the NEMA website later on this afternoon, just in case you need to pop out a little bit early, or if you want to share it with your colleagues, that would be great. We do have closed captionings. If you want to put that on, that would be great. And Angela, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. I'm going to share my screen here so just give me just a moment here. There we go. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm Angela. I'm actually with the Chicago Architecture Center. I wish that I was with the Chicago Arts Center because I would love to be able to draw, but I can just draw straight lines. I can't, I'm not an artist, but I'm excited to talk to you today about how we are navigating this virtual world of programming, engaging with young people, really with all audiences, but specifically my role as the Director of Education is looking at kind of like our K-12 portfolio, although I do a lot of work with our volunteers and the adult programs that they serve. Not only, how do we engage online? How do we get people to pay for things online when we live in a world of YouTube and instant gratification? How do we get people to want to buy and find value in a ticketed experience? So here's kind of what our session looks like today. It's going to be fast and furious. This is lunchtime. We're all busy people, but we're going to try to make this as impactful as I can. We're going to talk a little bit about why am I calling into the New England Museum Association from Chicago, and how does that, what does that have to do with New England? We're going to talk about that a little bit as I introduce myself to you. We're going to do a little bit of a warm up together. I know we're in a webinar, but we're going to be using the chat function a lot to communicate with each other, and the Q&A function if a question pops up. How has engagement changed? What are schools and families looking for? How do we create and run and facilitate programs, again, that people are going to want to pay for? What does that look like? What are some of the things that I've done in my role here, some things that I've worked with other cultural institutions here in the Chicagoland area, and partnerships that we've had, and successes, and also some failures and things that didn't work for us. During this time, I want to hear a lot from you because there's a lot of expertise in this group on like, yeah, I've tried that, or have you thought about this, or this is a program that we've run. Something when I work with our volunteers and our staff is, school is never out for the pro, right? We're always constantly learning, constantly exploring new things. So I want to be very clear that I don't want this to just be a one-way dialogue, okay? We'll talk about some tips and tools. And then of course, you're gonna wanna stick around till the end because not only am I extremely entertaining, but I'm gonna give away something free at the end. But you must be present to win. So you're gonna wanna stick around till the end, okay? So my question to you, we already kind of talked about in the chat, like where are you from? If you haven't put that in the chat yet, please do, because that really does help me understand a little bit more of like where you're coming from and where your expertise lie. But I'm curious, are you still working remote like working from home, working from a coffee shop or wherever, or have you returned to your institution? I'm a little bit curious on that. So put it in the chat. Are you still working from home? Are you back at work, back to the grind? How are things going? For some reason, I can't pull up the chat in presentation mode, which is very frustrating for me.
Would you like me to verbalize some of them?
Actually, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
So I can go back. I'm pretty good at doing multiple things at one time. I am a parent, but
yeah, for some reason Zoom does, it takes over your entire screen and that's about it. Let's see, a lot of people are fully back to work. Just make sure that if you are using the chat, if you would do like to share with everybody, to select all attendees, all panelists and attendees. I'm going to give up talking today. Some people are in hybrid, some in the office, some are still closed. We do have someone from Alberta, Canada. They are all fully remote. We do have someone that was only shut down for 8 weeks. So it looks like there's a bunch of variations of fully back to work and still working from home.
Awesome, awesome. I guess I can say to all of those things that Heather just listed, I guess in my response to that would be same. Because some weeks I'm in our center working and some weeks I'm at home. Some weeks I see people, some weeks I don't. We're open, we're closed, right? It's hard for us as museum or institution, cultural institution professionals to plan. But one thing that I think is interesting is all of the data that we have been kind of tracking on and looking at through our public schools, through the state of Illinois, and through some of our surrounding areas. And I'm going to go out on a limb that parts of New England are similar, is that let's just imagine that tomorrow COVID-19 goes away. Wouldn't that be nice? Can you imagine? Like just close your eyes for a minute, just like imagine what that would be like. But let's just say it's going to be a very long time before people feel fully comfortable with resuming normal activities, right? Maybe sending their kids to camp. Now, I mentioned earlier that I am a parent as well. I'm on the complete opposite side and I'm like, what can I find to send her to do, right? And I don't want her to look at the screen more than she absolutely has to, right? So how do we engage all of these different facets of people? We're going to talk about that today, all right? So when I asked the question earlier, you know, like, how does architecture in Chicago, like, why in the world am I here? Why am I talking to you about this? Why am I an expert? I'm not an expert, first of all, but our mission statement is to help people discover why design matters. And I want you to think for a moment to yourself, like, what is something that you use every day that was designed by someone? This is going to be important for what we're going to talk about later, okay, in engagement strategies and what we're going to talk about in just a minute. I will say that if you've ever been to Chicago, and if you have been to Chicago, please put it in the chat. When I tell people that I work for the CAC, this is the first image that comes to mind for most of them, right? Do you give the river cruise? I love the river cruise. I've always been, every time I go to Chicago, I have to get on the river. That's usually the number one thing that people say to me. I don't give the river cruise. I'm sorry to disappoint. I know how, but our wonderful volunteers and docents give this experience. But this is kind of what we're known for. But we're a unique institution because our collection, the things that you engage with, the things that you learn about, you go outside of our museum to see. We do have a space. We do have an education space, which I'll talk about in just a second. We're a little bit different where you go outside to see our collection, right? But we opened 3 years ago, we opened the Chicago Architecture Center. And if you've been to Chicago, if you're familiar with Chicago, it's very close to the Magnificent Mile at the corner of Michigan Avenue and Upper Wacker Drive. And it's 2 floors of gallery spaces. We have the Chicago Gallery, which talks all about how Chicago became the city of architecture and a laboratory for innovation. You know, we like to hang our hat on being the first, you know, having the first skyscraper. If there's anybody from New York on this call, we'll arm wrestle about it later. But that is one thing that historians say, right? That we invented the first skyscraper. We're the home of Daniel Burnham, so on and so forth. You go upstairs and we talk about skyscrapers. for 25 years, Sears or Willis Tower, depending on what you call it, was the tallest building in the world. And now it's not even in the top 10 tallest. But those tallest buildings in the world, in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and places like that, are being designed here in Chicago. So what are we doing that the rest of the world is interested in? So this is really the first time that we've had a gallery space and a museum space and a way to engage people in a physical way. It's always been out on the boat before. So back to the original question of why the heck am I here and why am I talking to you about this, is I became involved with NEMA about 3 years ago when our center was getting ready to open, because I had never worked in a museum before. I actually was an architect for 13 years. And then I always joke that like, I didn't like money. So I decided to become a teacher and an educator and go into nonprofit. And that's what brought me to the CAC. It was kind of like the perfect like marriage of those two backgrounds, architecture and education. But I didn't know anything. And the people who worked with us didn't know anything. So who does museums best? New England. So that's why I got involved, and that's how I met awesome people like Heather and Scarlett and Meg, which I'm so excited to be here with you today. So we offer a lot of different things. A lot of our programs that I'm going to talk to you about today are on our website. So if I say something today and you're like, I'd like to know more information about that, go to our website at architecture.org and get some examples of like engagement strategies and things that we're doing virtually and in person, safely in person. If there's anything that I say today that kind of stirs your soul, okay? But one thing that I want you to walk away with from today is really, really my job as I'm engaging young people, again, either online or in person, is to help people understand how these two pictures side by side are the same city, less than 3 miles apart. That we work with students who come from neighborhoods in like the picture on the left and get off a school bus on the picture on the right. And how do we help them interpret what it is they're seeing? How do policies get made? What are building codes? Where does the money go? Why do we have aldermans? And how is money appropriated? We're not just talking about shiny skyscrapers, right? We're talking about helping students interpret and engaging students in a meaningful way. So without further ado, let's talk about that, okay? Now, I'm going to ask you some questions. It's going to seem really obscure, but again, it's going to be important as we talk about engagement, okay? Remember a moment ago, I asked you, what is something, why does design matter? And what is something every day that was designed by someone? Put it in the chat. What is something you use every day that was designed by somebody? Don't overthink this.
Cell phone, everything, shower, toaster, laptop, my computer, iPhone, crayons, toaster again, mug, computer, my sunglasses, the Rip Van Winkle Bridge, coffee cup, computer, vehicle, calendar. Can I go on?
Yes, absolutely. Right? You can't, right? The eyeglasses that Heather has on her face right now were designed by somebody.
Yeah.
Right? the mouse, like nothing happens by accident, right? And so again, like every place that we go, everything that we use was designed by someone. But when things are designed poorly, or when we engage people online in maybe like a really boring, like I could just kind of like sit here and talk to you like this, and we could go on for an hour and it would be really boring, right? But when it's designed poorly, it can be annoying. How many of you have ever worn uncomfortable shoes before? You're like, oh my God, these were designed awful. How many
The
of you have
worst.
like, the worst? Yes, it's the worst. If you ever like, I don't know, my daughter rides her scooter down the sidewalk and like the sidewalk's broken, right? And she like trips over something as she's scooting down the street, right? If you like this one, the picture on the right actually drives me crazy because when I worked as an architect, I used to see this all the time, where if somebody would have just like turned the plug-in junction box sideways, like you could easily plug that in, right? Or my personal favorite, like this is a real picture from our old office before we opened our museum. Let me know when you see it, right? Yeah. Like this is clearly an example of somebody checking the box, right? Like, well, we need a toilet paper holder. I put one in. Not only that, like look at the handicap accessible bar, like the grab bar. Like if you've ever needed help, like post like maternity, like after if you've ever had a baby, you've ever had surgery of some kind, you have different abilities and you use a walker or a wheelchair, right? And you need to get up, like that's not helping anybody, right? Design matters. When good design is done well, it becomes invisible. It's only when it's done poorly that we notice it. It's highlighted and magnified. This is one great example I love to I know that a lot of us aren't traveling by air maybe as much as we would like to, but hopefully sometime soon that's coming. After you go through security and you're putting your shoes back on, like what's the number one thing you need to know? Where to go? The gate, right? You need to know where your gate is. But when something is redesigned, oh, here we go. I'm going from JFK to SeaTac, right? I'm going to gate 29. I know exactly where I need to go. Thoughtfully designed, thoughtful ways to engage people. Don't just check a box saying we did it. Ask yourself, why are we doing this? Who is the end user? Who is the student? Who is the person that we're engaging with, right? Now is a really good time to break the habits of saying, this is like a curse word to me. This is the way we've always done it, right? Right? No. We have a really unique opportunity here to talk to people and engage people and get people excited about your museum or your institution in a way that maybe they haven't. Here I am sitting in the Loop in downtown Chicago, talking to amazing people from New Hampshire and Hudson, New York, and people that I was, as I was seeing pop up Pennsylvania, Boston, right? We're able to connect and engage in new and different ways. So think about why you're doing it. Not just because it's the way that it's supposed to be done, okay? And a lot of the engagement strategies that we use look very similar. If there's any teachers on this call, which I'm assuming that there are, like I said, I mentioned my undergraduate degree. I went to school to be an architect, and then I went back, got my master's degree in teaching, secondary teaching, and I also teach part-time civics and government and American history at a Chicago public school here in the city. This sort of inquiry-based learning model, we call it the design process, but it's the same exact thing, right? Why are we doing this? How are we collecting information? What are we creating? Providing feedback and then asking ourselves, did this work or did this not work? What was the feedback, right? I've never once met someone who didn't want to give their opinion, right? Ask for feedback from people, even if it's from students. The phrase when we're done with a program, the phrase that I love to have students answer, it's kind of obscure, but they usually do a pretty good job with it, is I used to think, but now I think. I used to think that this was going to be boring. Now I think it's not that boring. I've heard I used to think that, learning through a webinar or through Zoom was going to be really boring, but now I think I'm excited to go check out X, Y, and Z. Okay, I used to think, but now I think. And then everything as we're engaging with students, again, online or in person, we have sort of this set of principles. And every program that we do doesn't necessarily meet all of these, but it kind of works as guidelines for us. Are we teaching them new vocabulary? Are they learning about their city? Are they understanding where this place is? Right? We talked about that, or Scarlett read that beautiful land acknowledgement. Where are we? How do we solve a problem? Are we making and touching something? And we'll talk about that in just a moment. How do we make and touch things when you're not supposed to touch, right? Access to experts. I have efficacy. I can make change, okay? So not every program we run touches all of these things, but it hits at least 5 or 6. And this is kind of our tools of success on like if we're running a good engagement program or not, okay? So, question, and Heather, I'm gonna need your help again. In the chat, how has being able to engage with people or with young people, young learners, how has it changed for you in the era of COVID?
Less hands-on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let me rephrase. It's COVID-19. I always say COVID. COVID's been around for a long time. COVID-19, sorry.
Inquiry-based, not super easy over Zoom, more personal, smaller groups.
Okay. Yeah, with the engagement over Zoom or Google Classroom, whatever it is that that your institution uses or your schools use, it is challenging. I sometimes joke with students that I'm like Dora the Explorer, where I like ask a question and then wait and then answer my own question, right? Like that sometimes you're just like talking to like boxes on the screen. I get.
Yeah, so someone did mention harder to read responses, more virtual, no field trips, no personal interactions at all. The wider geographic reach, which NEMA has also experienced there. People also don't know what to expect. A lot went online for a time using social media, smaller groups on tours now. Zooming, but reaching students as far away as China. I think that is
Very
the
cool.
one thing that is amazing, is watching all of these museums go global, basically. Less personal, hard to get to know kids, especially with after school programs.
Yes. Yes to all of that. Thank you for sharing. I think with as many challenges as we can face with engagement, there are some opportunities, right, that present themselves. Expanding your reach. I call it having a new crease in your brain, right? Like learning something that maybe you didn't know before, what works or what doesn't work. Trying and failing. Someone asked me, they were like, well, why is CAC, how have you been so successful with online programs? And I'm like, because we failed more times than probably than we've succeeded, right? Like we just started trying. So I appreciate the role that each one of you are in, because it's not easy. And I hope that by the time we're done, that maybe you have a couple of little nuggets that maybe you want to take back. So let's talk for a second about what do schools need. Somebody mentioned field trips, right? Like either in-person field trips have been eliminated, or teachers are so overwhelmed teaching online that like adding in an additional thing like a virtual field trip is not possible, or kind of a nightmare for them. For those that have returned in person, having somebody remote in is kind of a challenge. Like there's a whole basket of goods, right, that we can talk about. But let's specifically just talk and focus on like school and school needs. And I love this image that I pulled from CBS News, because I think it really illustrates well kind of what the next 8 to 12 months for education in schools might look like, right? We have the teacher up front. We have some students in the class. We have some desks that are empty with laptops on them. And it's kind of this flexible way of teaching and learning, right? You don't really know, we as cultural institutions don't really know when we're reaching out to a school, like what is their situation, right? And if it's a public school, there might be like a mandate, like what it is, right? But again, back to my original statement before of like, if COVID-19 all of a sudden just went away tomorrow, I really don't see a way that virtual and online engagement is not going to be around for a while. And we've actually just made like a policy on our education team of like, we've been running virtual camps and programs this past year, been pretty successful with it. But when we return to in-person learning, which hopefully is maybe this summer or by fall at the latest, we will still run virtual options, because there will be a need there. We don't see that necessarily going away anytime soon. Okay, so we have to kind of wear two hats. But one way that we've been able to charge for ticketed experiences with our programs is in the way of field trips. Now, this is a screenshot of me on leading a virtual field trip. And in a survey that we sent out to Chicago Public Schools and to the Archdiocese, which are the two largest school districts in the Chicagoland area, asking like, what do you find value in? What's worth knowing and what's worth experiencing, right? Back to the principles that I just shared with you a moment ago in that long list. What's worth knowing and what's worth experiencing? What do you need? And basically what the feedback is we are uninterested in paying for an experience that's pre-recorded. Fair, okay? But if you're a smaller cultural institution, if you've suffered mass layoffs, right? And your team went from 10 to 3, running something live every single time, and just the logistical nightmare that would be is maybe not always possible. So one thing that we decided to do was to record some tours. This particular one is outside the screen capture. We also have one of our gallery spaces. And basically it's me conducting a field trip. However, it's live facilitated by a group of volunteers. These are our volunteer education guides. And I'm sure most of you who are on this call are like, we literally couldn't do it without our volunteers. Volunteers are usually the backbone of most nonprofits or institutions like ours, right? So these are a group of volunteers that are getting ready to jump on a call. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there's 60 students joining this call because our ratio is 1 volunteer per 10 students. They come online just like you see here in this screen capture. They welcome, then they go to their breakout rooms. They play a little bit of the pre-recorded video and then they pause and they do some engagement activities with the students. We've gone so far as to say, please come with something that they would have at home, right? Or have accessible to them. Paper, scissors, tape. And we're gonna build a column and we're gonna test with books the weight of the column. Okay, we're gonna get a little sciencey with you. Okay, so they discuss, watch a little bit more of the video, pause, come back, discuss. We actually had a sheet too, like a Word doc sheet that went out to students that kind of helped them fill in with some activities and some word searches, just something to keep them engaged the whole time. So again, one thing when I work with online engagement is I like to be wary of the fire hose of information, right? Like imagine there was somebody on here from like a firefighter museum, which by the way, sounds really cool, where you like hold the hose, turn it on and just like information like shoots right out at the students, right? That's not what we want. It's kind of what's happening right now today for our luncheon, but that's not what we want with students and with young people, right? So we've got small groups with our volunteers or staff or however it is that you're doing it, right? And this way we can have a little bit of pre-recorded with some live engagement, and the teacher or educator, whoever is booking this experience, feels like their students have been seen and heard. They're not just setting them in front of a computer and pushing play and letting them watch something, okay? The experiences are about 60 minutes. We find anything longer than that for students. Our regular, like if you're going to come take a tour with us, a field trip tour would be about 90 minutes in person. But through Zoom, it's just too hard, right? Any longer than 60 minutes and you start kind of like getting this look going, right? They're kind of starting to lose interest, okay? Asking lots of questions. As an educator, like I'm okay with the silence. I'm okay with the awkwardness, right? If I'm gonna be like, Scarlett, I haven't seen from you. I noticed that now of course I'm picking on the NEMA people because I know they can handle it, but like looking at the black boxes that I'm looking at right now, if this was my classroom, Scarlett, I haven't heard from you. I haven't seen anything in the chat. What do you think about this? And then just wait, right? Now you don't ever want to call a student out, right? That's like maybe if you're not quite for sure what their situation is, right? But imagine that everybody behind that black screen has a sign that they're holding that says, make me feel important, make me feel seen. I'm at home or I'm sitting at my desk and I'm 6 feet away from all my friends. I have a plastic screen around me. I'm wearing a mask, help me feel seen. So this is one way through field trips and online engagement that we found a lot of success. I'll be really transparent with you. We charge about $10 a student. And then we have like a minimum cap, like we won't take a booking that's at least, a certain amount. We charge about $10 a student unless they're public school, and then they get or can prove that they serve under free and reduced lunch or whatever their student situation might be. We want it to be accessible, as accessible as we can for our schools. Okay. Another way that we found online engagement is through workshops, which you might ask yourself, like, well, what's the difference between a workshop and a field trip? So glad you asked that question. This is me in our design studio in our learning space, and I am walking the students through an urban planning exercise using some works by Jane Jacobs, talking about urban planning, city planning, what makes a good city and what makes a good neighborhood, And what does the word good mean? Who decides what good or even affordable means, right? When I run workshops like this, the students are usually at home. They can be in the classroom, but they might be at home too. This is good for either in school time or out of school time, like maybe like a camp or a Saturday workshop that maybe you would want to run. But if we're going to charge for something, we need to provide them more than just our time, right? And so what that means is, you know, finding some simple, inexpensive materials that could either A, be picked up if they're local at your institution or at your museum, right? And maybe working with your guest services people, being really friendly to the people who are at the front desk or however your museum works, right? Here in this example, we used Post-its, a Sharpie, and some colored construction paper. So they can come pick up the materials for a small fee. We will ship it to them, right? In like a soft packet envelope. The thing with shipping materials or having them come pick up materials is this: you got to plan ahead of time, right? You got to, if it's almost May, we're looking at early June by the time we're, you know, talking about registration and sending materials out, so on and so forth. So here we are sort of talking and walking through a live experience. I will also say that if it's just me, for example, here running this workshop, there is a cap on how many people can join the call because we do it Zoom or Google Classroom style. And if the classroom, yes, maybe I have 50 people interested and want to register for this, but I might make it a cap of 20 for a couple of reasons. Number one, the student experience. Remember that holding the sign like make me feel important, right? I want to be able to engage with each student or each student that wants to feel engaged online. Okay. And the second thing is that, you know, you want to create a demand. There is nothing, I will tell you, I ran a camp last summer and it was the first one of the first ones that we did. We didn't know what we were doing at all. And I put a cap on it and it sold out. And just putting the word sold out on our social media, what do you think that did to the level of interest of people wanting to register their own students? Yeah, right? So we started that. So then we ran a second one, right? And that one filled up, right? Limited time, limited edition. We want to serve everybody. How can we do that and still maintain the student experience? As we think about engaging online and those tools or those strategies of, like, I think somebody mentioned, you know, how it's changed of like being able to engage when all you're looking at is black boxes on the screen, or somebody's like walking around their house and their camera is shaking, you know, their computer is shaking. One thing that I like to say in the welcome email that goes out to parents, and then I also say it at the beginning of the class, is if you don't want to be called on, if you're kind of like, if your student is on the no call list for whatever reason, maybe have them make an avatar that has a special picture on it, right? So that I know. Maybe have them use the raised hand function the whole time if they want to participate, but don't put it up if they don't. Okay, because we want students to feel comfortable in our space, but it's also important, like if they're going to join, it's important for their learning experience for them to participate. So there's a couple different ways that we've kind of coached and worked with parents with being able to call on students and making everybody feel comfortable and welcome. Okay. So those are a couple of ways: field trips, workshops that we've engaged with families, or excuse me, with schools. Also using our social media in order to get through to the gatekeeper, to get to the schools, get to the teacher or whomever it is that makes the decision. We found that overcoming one of our greatest challenges was just getting students to our museum and the cost of the bus. That, like, if they could pay for the program, the cost of the bus was usually really expensive for students. And I know there's some museums that like have grant funded opportunities where buses are free, or maybe the field trip is free. They just have to get themselves there, whatever. But doing it online, I kind of like pumped that up a little bit, right? Like, you don't have to pay for any of this. You just have to pay to come, right? You don't have to pay for all the extra and shuffling kids on and off the bus. Just come, okay? So for families, it kind of opens up a whole different, and I understand I'm going fast, but I want to be mindful of time. For families, it's kind of a whole different thing. I know there's probably some parents on this call. I know that there are probably parents of very young students, of young children, early childhood, 6-year-old in my house, right? And these two comics speak to me like, oh my gosh, just go find something to do, right? Or we're gonna go outside, but just pretend like everybody's lava, right? Don't get too close, everybody's lava, right? We're gonna see a lot of different types of parents and families who want to be engaged with us. And it's also going to be really interesting for those who are just now reopening or recently reopened or who are getting ready to open. As people start traveling from other states, especially if they're vaccinated, they have kind of like this different idea of like what safe is. And we've noticed pretty quickly at our box office, just people just walking in without a mask on. And it's like, it's still the state mandate. You still have to wear it. You're inside, but I'm vaccinated. I get that. But like, so, there's just all of these like kind of hurdles that we have to overcome, right? So all of that to say, there's different types of engagements for families too. One particular way that we've overcome this is with camps and classes and running specialized camps, summer camps and summer classes. We ran this past summer 2020, we ran four virtual camps. They were all sold out with a capacity of 35, which for our staff size, we have about 65 staff members pre-COVID. I think we're closer to maybe 40 with layoffs post-COVID. The education department went from 18 to 4 people. So 35 students per class, seeing 4 or 5 of them is a lot of work, is a lot of lift for an individual. But here I am in a breakout session with some of our students. And I use this picture for a couple of different reasons. Number one, this was a really successful camp. The girls were, this was an all girls camp. Let me preface by saying that this was an all girls architecture camp. And they were learning about tiny homes. They were building tiny homes out of recycled shipping containers, building models and drafting floor plans and that sort of thing. And you can see just kind of like how differently each student is learning, right? We've got like one who has kind of like a calm background. She's clearly like in her room or maybe like in her parents' office, right? Then you have one, she's got like her full headset on, like she's ready to go. She's ready to learn. One is in the car and is like doing camp in the car, but still participating. But being able to work with these smaller group sizes and making the theme of the camp or class something really exciting. I never had a problem with students turning their cameras on because they wanted to be involved. They were excited about what we were talking about. Put Lego in the name of a camp, put science in the name of a camp, right? Or shipping and masts and sails. I don't know anything about maritimes, but like something that triggers them to get excited about what you're about to talk about. Okay. So we ran camps in the morning, like 9 a.m. to about noon with about a 15-minute break in between. Then from 1 to 2, I had office hour times where I would just log on to Zoom and I'd be doing some other things, some other work. But if the girls had questions or the students, if it was another camp, had questions, they knew that every day from 1 to 2 p.m. Central Time, they could log on and have a one-on-one conversation with me. Again, right? Make me feel important, make me feel seen. What I noticed is the parents found more value in paying for an experience if they knew that their student had one-on-one opportunities with the teacher. Now, I will say all of this was recorded. It's kind of not good practice to be alone, quote unquote, alone in a virtual or classroom setting with a student. Just protection for you, protection for the student. So everything was recorded. The parent knew that ahead of time that yes, they can join, but it's going to be recorded. Okay. So camps and classes. I like to say camps are like week-long things. Classes are maybe like a Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon or something like a one-off kind of thing. But they operate, for us, they operated the same way. For this particular camp, if it was a 1-week situation, we charged about $400 a student, okay? Now, for some of you, depending on your museum, you would be like, there's no way I would get anybody to pay that. And there might be some of you who are like, that's it? That's all you charged for a week? And I understand that there's a lot of different, you have to figure out like who are you serving? What is reasonable? What are you offering? We also offered scholarships. So some students participate on scholarship. But in order to kind of help parents understand like what are they paying for? Each student received a backpack or like a drawstring bag, if that's something maybe that you have in your shop that you can get at cost. Oriental Trading Company is a great resource for like totes and bags and things. And then we put materials inside. I just randomly called up Blick Art Supply and was like, hey, you don't know me, I don't know you, but we're wanting to do these camps. We're a nonprofit, can you help us? They were like, absolutely, what do you need? I need pencils, I need erasers, I need straight edges, and they just, sure. Maybe there's some funding to help bring down the cost and subsidize, right? But giving the student, either having it shipped to them or having, we would do like an after work option, like from 5 to 8 p.m., you can come pick up your student's kit, or for X amount of dollars, we will ship it to you. Again, you have to plan because you want to set the student up for success. You want them to have the tools ready on the first day of camp. You have to, kind of figure that out on the calendar. But letting them actually have something so that they can feel like they're participating as a group, okay? But what we got back, I had the students photograph their work every day, and then by 3 o'clock, they had to send it to me, what they completed for the day. And my rule of thumb is, if you email me, I will take the time to read it and respond. So with every email that came in, I would say something like, I really like the way you incorporated the kitchen and dining room area. This is the tiny home shipping container one, right? I appreciate, that your pool is 10 times the size of your house here on the left in your bubble diagram, right? Saying something that is specific about this student. And you might think that like the quality of work in virtual settings and virtual engagement might suffer. That wasn't necessarily our experience because some of the work we were talking about, how do you read floor plans, right? In different views. We're reading it from the top, the floor plan view, the front, which is the elevation, cutting it in half the section, and then a 3D dimension. This is a 7th grader who turned this in. Back to the beginning when Heather said from the art center, like this, I can't do this. Like, this is amazing. This is amazing work, right? The students are excited about engaging online. They want to participate. They want to show you. They don't just want to be a box on the screen, right? They want you to see them. Make me feel important. And then this was just another based on this particular student used an apple because that's what she had at home. This particular student used a green pepper, which is what was asked for in the activity, right? And just taking a picture, sending it in to me. It also helps you engagement-wise track who's not emailing you. And then reaching out to the parent, say, hey, Johnny hasn't sent anything in. Is everything okay? How can I encourage? How can I help? You're just upping the value of what you're offering. So simple. And then there were some select campers who wanted to get together in person. And again, this is based on, they were part of a virtual camp, but they discovered through some team building activities, we started every day with a team building activity so they could get to know one another, who each other were. These 2 girls found out that they lived about 4 blocks from each other. And they decided to meet up in person at a park where they felt safe and their parents felt like that was a safe option for them. And they worked on their project together. And one of the parents snapped this picture and sent it to me, right? So think outside of the box. Yes, we're engaging in a virtual setting, but you never know what connections are going to be made, right? And then the last thing that I want to say about engaging online is, if sending physical materials or having them come pick up physical materials isn't possible for you for budget or logistics or otherwise, harness the power of tech. I am not a techie person. Like, I'm almost 40. I grew up in the DOS green screen with light green letter floppy disk era, right? When you like had to take a computer class to learn about home road. Like, I don't understand technology. The fact that we're all on Zoom here together today, like, blows my mind. But your students, as young as, you know, my daughter figures out things all the time. She's 6. So they can do it if you want to incorporate it. This was a student that was 11. And instead of building a physical model, she actually made a movie about her process. Remember the design process and the inquiry-based model that I showed you a little while ago? She walked through the design process, and just through a series of video and photograph, that's what spoke to her in how she chose to communicate virtually and engage virtually. That wasn't the assignment. That wasn't what I asked of her, but that's what made her feel the most comfortable. And I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with that flexibility. The last thing that I'll mention, and again, I just want to be mindful of time as we wrap up here today. Sometimes don't miss the forest for the trees. I feel like I'm using a lot of like slogans here, but there are times when opportunities might present themselves where you can't engage and charge money for it, but will lead you to other opportunities. Okay. Now, those of us who are educators and do a lot of work with students or with the public understand that sometimes we're in it for the long game, right? That there might not be instant money, but maybe philanthropic dollars might come through, maybe a donor, maybe it leads you to something else. This part is the hardest part for sometimes the executive team or the decision makers to wrap their brain around, because it's not instant money in a time that we are, most of us, I'm assuming, are struggling financially. This was an opportunity. We use these books from Andrea Beatty all the time in our curriculum. Iggy Peck Architect, Rosie Revere Engineer. We love these books. And I just on a whim emailed the publishing company, or maybe I emailed Andrea Beatty, now I can't remember, and just said, hey, we use these books. We love them for this reason. I don't know what my ask is, but I would love to partner with you in some way. In 2 days, she emailed me back and copied her publisher and said, I would love to do that. I'm looking for more ways to get engaged. We're hosting an Iggy Peck Day because I have a new book coming out. Spoiler alert, she has a new book coming out. And I think this would be great. And so I was able to, they did an Insta story on this. This is me and my daughter. And we were able to read one of her stories live during this Iggy Peck Day and do like a little activity with the students who were joining from home, with the kids who were joining from home. It was fun. We didn't make any money doing it. However, somebody saw this, reached out to us and said, I saw Angela on Andrea Beatty's website and the Abram Book Company's website. I would like to sponsor this and that. Awesome. So just because money isn't coming in right away, like, be in it for the long haul. Find something that you're passionate about and that is fun and exciting to you, and figure out a way to make it a program. Okay. That's the cool thing about, or one of the possibilities about this time, because if it fails, you have the excuse of being like, well, it was COVID, right? Like, it didn't work because it was COVID. But what if you succeed and it turns into something amazing? All right. I call it taking the girdle off your brain, right? Like thinking bigger, expanding bigger. And when all else fails, just ask people to pay for things, right? If we're going to run this for free and people registered and I send out a thank you email, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, the education team doesn't run on hope, it runs on money. So if something inspired you today, you know, any contribution you can give is amazing. Those scholarships that I mentioned for the summer camp that we offered, because we do want to make sure that our programs are accessible to all different backgrounds of students. In the wrap-up email with some pictures, I sent this link, and we raised $700 from one camp, just from parents. They might not be able to spend $400, but maybe they can give $25. because they want to contribute. They want to say thank you for the work that you're doing for their student, right? And those things add up. So that's really all I have for the end of our time today. I know we're getting close to the end here. Any questions? Any? You're just like, oh my God, please stop talking, Angela.
No, you're doing a great job. You've covered a lot. So on your virtual camps, do you limit that just to the Chicago area just because there is that shipping aspect of it, or is it more open?
It's open. One of our summer campers was in Israel, and we shipped her a kit to Israel. So yeah, it's kind of goes to all over the place.
Okay. And earlier you mentioned your school programs and stuff like that you charge $10 per head. What is your reduced rate?
Reduced rate is usually $7. We do have some homeschool groups that, come in with, maybe like 4 or 5 students, and that's not really worth it for them to pay that. We're flexible, and we do offer some scholarships for specific schools or situations.
Okay. So you've mentioned failures a couple times. Would you mind going into a couple of them, or some of the things that you learned from those failures? I think the greatest thing that I love about the museum field is we do share those failures. Like, hey, I tried this. This is what happened. We're not going to do this again, but we tried. Yes, absolutely. Where do I start with the failures? No time we have here, right? I think one off the top of my head, something that I was really excited about with we're going to get these kits together. We're going to ship them out. It's going to be amazing. These kids are going to feel so successful. At early 2020 into mid 2020, when the Postal Service was nobody knew what they were doing, half the kits didn't arrive. And then I had parents calling and being like, my kid doesn't have any of their supplies and they're sitting here crying. What are you going to do about it? Right? Yes, just end meeting, right? So if you're going to put yourself out there, you have to be prepared for a delay on something, or students who have different abilities. I had a student that I didn't know because I didn't ask the question, are they a diverse learner? Do they have issues with tactile things? We want our students to feel successful. So if I'm teaching a really complicated something about math, and it really is best if they're in person. Actually, that did happen to me, right? Trying to how do you draw something when you're trying to move your computer so they can see it, and just the logistical failures behind it. But asking really intentional questions about what can I do to set your student up for success? The parent will tell you, right? They don't want to be called on. They are hard of hearing. And so sometimes having the closed captioning like you've done here is really helpful. I never considered that before, that maybe they can't hear. Just different when you're talking about diversity in learners, that's really important. I also think maybe stating your privilege when you're working with students and diversity in students, that has been, I've failed a lot by saying how are you guys doing? Well, maybe you're not all guys, right? I do that all the time, and I pinch myself underneath my chair. I've had students call me out on that before, and it's embarrassing. There's lots of trial and error. Some failures are bigger than others. Some you can just kind of gloss over and keep moving. But I think planning and being intentional, we rush a lot in the nonprofit sector because we all wear multiple hats and are probably doing the one person's doing the work of 6 people. And I think just slowing down a little bit and being more mindful and planning helped me overcome a lot of those failures. That's good. So how do you go about finding the teachers in schools to partner with? Great question. We use our social media sites a lot. We got into organizations for here in Chicago, the Chicago Teachers Union, the CTU, finding somebody that was an in.
using teachers that have booked with us before and offering like, we will give you a free virtual field trip if you can share the names or share this email with your network, right? Like you got to get past the gatekeeper. And they get bombarded with so many emails. But finding like the one that can spider web out and lead you to the others has been really helpful for us.
So that kind of follows up with your camp, your summer camps and stuff like that, of how do you find the kids? Because someone made a comment, we used to book our camp groups through the camp directors. How do you market your summer camps and classes to parent groups? Yeah.
Here in Chicago, we have specific parent groups like the New Parents Organization, Chicago Parent Magazine. Some of those will not advertise if your program is not free, so it makes it a little bit challenging. But again, we have found, I will say this, our social media page used to be very curated. It went through like the bureaucracy of to get something posted was unbelievable. And I'm sure there are people on this call who've experienced the same thing. COVID basically took that and did this and set it back up, right? And now it's like, well, maybe I have a retired volunteer who's 70 years old, but he's got 4 grandchildren in Ohio that want to participate in a program. Like reach out to, just because they're not on your parents list doesn't mean they don't know kids, right? And definitely using our social media. We just use that more than I can say, specifically Facebook. Instagram is a little different, but specifically our Facebook page.
That one. And then did you, because I know a lot of us were struggling at the very beginning of all of this, of like, did you repurpose some of your programs or did you recreate some of them? Did you start fresh?
It was kind of a mixed bag. We started with things that we know and tried to modify for a virtual setting. So when I showed the picture of me on the tour, I had a mask on. It looked like I was about ready to pull it down. That was a tour that we give all year round when we're running #normal. So I tried to find a way to like record myself doing that. And then we layered in an additional engagement strategy with having volunteers facilitate conversation in conjunction with. So we started with like, what do I already know and what do I already own? I would say that if you're struggling financially with like materials, take an inventory of what you already have and see like, what can I create that I can use these materials that are already sitting here that we can already do or use, excuse me.
So how much did you practice before you go virtual? Because I know before our virtual conference for NEMA, we did a lot of practice sessions.
It depends. Before we suffered some pretty significant layoffs on our team. And I had staff that like basically, would talk like to students. It was basically like this, and they were just like, so they didn't want to, and then you get me on screen. I'm like, hey, everybody, so like, it's like a moving target. But I think one of the greatest assets that I've had, especially teaching high school, part-time, which I do, is I record myself alone and then I go back and watch it because you are your own worst enemy, right? If you've ever, if you and Scarlett and Meg have ever practiced anything together, I can almost guarantee you that Scarlett and Meg are going to be like, Heather, you were awesome. That was so good. You're like, no. I need you to be
10 things I did wrong today.
Right.
I can name them right now on this webinar.
Yeah. Let's get real here. So you are your own worst critic, right? So I think recording yourself and then going back and watching it, you can time it that way as well. You can see how many times you say like, or you touch your hair, which is me. Like I'm always like, I'm nervous, I do this. And you see things that maybe you wouldn't see otherwise.
Yep. So unfortunately we are at the 1 o'clock hour. We've had some really great questions and discussions. So Angela, I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank everybody that attended today. I do want to mention that the Museum Learning Hub, which NEMA is part of with the other regional associations, is also discussing virtual realm stuff. So if you do want to check that out, Scarlett left a link in the chat feature there. Angela also left her email in the chat, so that would be great. Also, make sure to take our post-webinar survey. We always appreciate the feedback because, hey, we're all educational programs needing feedback. So make sure to check out the NEMA website for a list of upcoming events and calendar. We also do have our conference coming up, which is virtual again this November, and our call for proposals is due June 11th, and that information is also available on the website. So Angela, any final words going forward?
Let's do our best. Let's make the end of 2021 and looking into 2022 amazing. I would love to stay connected. I did put my email in there. I would love to hear from you. I would love to come visit. I am actually from the New York area. I'm from Buffalo originally. So sometimes I have like this weird, I say things like yesterday and people hear, why are you talking that way? So I would love to visit you or come see what you're doing. Kathy, I knew you were good people, and just stay in touch.
Okay. So I guess we're going to wrap up, and I want to say thank you to everybody and hope to see you at a future NEMA event. Thanks, Angela. Bye.